The reason we had to move to a shop is because one of the permits for the cottage food ended up not being what it needed to be, and there were rules that I didn't know about, and we couldn't do it out of my home anymore.
So for the first 2 years, were you basically doing it illegally?
Not knowingly doing it illegally.
What is up, everyone? I'm Kyle, and I am the host and founder of the Freedom to Fail podcast and Fail Nation, a community where failing while pursuing our dreams is a positive and taking uncertain chances is celebrated. This podcast is for those who have a dream of starting a business or doing something they have always dreamed of, but have been held back by their fears. Our purpose is to share the unsuccessful stories of successful people so that you can learn how to take the first steps towards achieving your dreams. You deserve to live a life full of freedom and free of fear. Let's do this.
All right. So today on Freedom to Fail, I'm here with Jenna Parker, sitting in her beautiful shop in Orem. How are you doing, Jenna?
Good. How are you, Kyle?
I am doing great. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about your company. Your company is Max a la Mode. You started it in May. You said it'll be 3 years since you officially launched. And then you have now a retail space that's been open for about 7 months now, right?
Yep. That's it. We started 3 years ago in May is when we started. We launched over Labor Day weekend. I had a 1-year-old baby and wanted something to do, and baking became that thing. We were lucky. We were able to start off with an appearance on a local TV show before we even opened, before we had our grand opening.
Wow.
So we had this big hype surrounding us and people telling me I needed to expand before I even opened. So that was fun. But we just did pop-up shops and stuff for a couple of years. And when a space opened up nearby, we snagged it after a couple of years. So it's been really fun.
So how did you get that interview spot or that spot on the local TV?
So that's actually a pretty crazy story. I started the Instagram page private and was just kind of backloading a bunch of photos, a bunch of posts of my macaroon ice cream sandwiches. And literally on a Sunday night, I made it public. And by 10 o'clock Monday morning, I had a message from a producer at the place on Fox 13 wanting me to come on the show.
Wow. I'm sure a lot of businesses could only imagine and could only dream for that. So that's an incredible launch there.
Yeah, it was shocking.
Yeah. I have to say, for everyone listening, these are the most unique things. They're so cool. Like, they're literally, if you've ever had a French macaroon, or how do you pronounce it? I don't even know. I
say macaroon.
Okay.
I mean, technically, I guess macaron.
Yeah.
But I feel a little pretentious saying it like that.
Yeah.
So I say macaroon.
Same here. So imagine one of those. Well, imagine two of those with homemade ice cream right in the middle. And that's what they are. They're ice cream sandwiches inside of macaroons. So they are incredible. I've actually been a fan since the beginning. I would go all the time with my friends. I remember I think it had to have been a year later, the 4th of July parade down in Provo. Mm-hmm. You were already pretty big at that point. Mm-hmm. And so everyone, whenever you would announce where the locations were, there would be lines and you had to get there super early before people would sell out. So that was incredible. They're the best things ever. How did you get the idea?
So that I started, like I said, I had a 1-year-old. I was kind of looking for a little side hustle, something to do. I wasn't working my full-time corporate job anymore. And I wanted to just do something, and I love to bake. So I was going to make the regular macaroons, the regular small macaroon cookies that you see for weddings and parties, and just kind of do a little catering side hustle. My sister actually around the same time went on a cruise and came home and said, I had a giant macaroon filled with gelato on the beach. It was the best thing I've ever had in my life. You have to start making them. And about a month later, Max a la Mode was born.
Wow. So where did you come up with the recipes? Did you just find some and tried them out?
Yeah, it took a lot of practice. It took a lot of finding the actual macaron recipe that I loved. There's a lot of recipes out there.
Yes.
It's only 4 ingredients, but they can, the way they're mixed, the proportions and everything can make such a different cookie. Once I found the perfect one, I knew that I could start producing them and selling them. It was a product I was happy with. So it was good that I already had that recipe down before she came to me with this great idea.
And then what about the ice cream? Did you just teach yourself how to make ice cream
The ice
too?
cream is actually not homemade.
Oh, okay.
The ice cream we buy from local sellers. We started the business in my home.
Yeah.
And with a cottage food permit, you're actually not allowed to make the ice cream.
That's true.
So we have been buying the ice cream.
Okay.
Yeah.
That means someone out there makes the Fruity Pebbles ice cream and I have no idea where it is. And now I really want to know. So with this, how was the reception at first? Did you start and immediately take off, or was it kind of a slow burn?
It was a pretty immediate and overwhelming takeoff. Okay. Like I said, we were on TV before anyone even tried our product. We also had a local, I guess, influencer. Now she owned, her name's Tara Thurwison. Her and her business partner owned a clothing boutique here. And she messaged me actually and said, I just saw these online. I have a team meeting at my company. Do you have a dozen that I can buy? And luckily I had like 15 little prototype sandwiches in my freezer. And I said, yeah, sure. She posted about me. That helped us blow up. I also did a photo shoot with Courtney Jean swimsuits.
Yeah.
That helped us blow up a lot too. And also has helped me grow friendships with both of them as well. So yeah, so that helped just kind of launch us and grow our numbers, and more people were seeing them really quickly right at the beginning.
Small world. I just interviewed Courtney a couple weeks ago. So yeah, that's awesome. She's really, really cool there.
She's awesome.
With all of this, I guess let's go back to the beginning now.
Okay.
Did you always imagine yourself to be an entrepreneur and have a side hustle, or is this kind of just something that fell in your lap and you're trying to learn on the go?
I've always loved creating.
Okay.
It's always been something I've always loved to bake. I've been baking cookies for my family as long as I can remember. I've loved cooking. My dad has taught me how to cook all throughout my whole life, but I never thought it would be a big career or a big business like it is now. I also always worked kind of corporate-y. I was pre-med at the U 10 years ago. I actually got swine flu and had to withdraw because I was so sick.
I got swine flu. What a coincidence.
What a coincidence. My last job before I started Max a la Mode, I was actually an executive assistant at an accounting firm. So it was never kind of more side hustle for sure. I wanted to do something creative, but yeah, didn't think anything would be this big.
So with everything that you've done in the past 3 years, what would you say has been the hardest thing for you up to this point? Just to learn?
The hardest thing was learning actually how to have a consistent product.
Okay.
It's nice that we have one thing and we do it really well now. But there was a time when I was even making just the macaroons for a party for my sister, luckily, and they didn't turn out. The party ended up being postponed, not because of the macaroons, thank goodness, but it did give me extra time to be able to perfect them. And from there, people wanted to buy them. Yeah. I got orders for those just from that party. Then we grew into this, but that was challenging. Perfecting the macaroons was pretty tricky.
Not a lot of people know this, but my lifelong dream has always been to open a bakery as well. And so I've been working a lot and just practicing baking and making cookies and all that stuff, because cookies are my favorite too. But it's so hard to get the product the same every single time.
Right,
so
that consistency. And that's what you have to have.
Yeah.
People want to know that if they had a delicious cookie, they come back and it's just as good as they remember the next time.
So that kind of falls in line with another question that I have. With this podcast, I always want to focus on businesses and how they can go from being a small business to being eventually $1 million business. Right. And with you, I liked your story a lot because you started as a side hustle. And I think that's, especially in these trying times, something that a lot of people are trying to do more of there. Right. So how did you go from a side hustle, just making it all yourself, to now being able to produce consistent cookies over and over and over again? Like, what were some of the systems that you developed to make sure that your product was consistent?
Yeah. I mean, just practicing consistency. Like I said, I did it out of my home for a lot of the time. And until we opened the shop 6 months ago, I was making every single ice cream sandwich. Yeah. From the cookie to the ice cream to everything, and assembling it. And I had complete control over what the final product was. And like I said, it's nice. It's a simple, once you have it down, it's a simple thing. And like I said, there's basically 4 main ingredients for a macaroon. But the way that those 4 ingredients can come together can be a total disaster.
Yeah.
So practice. I mean, not being afraid. I did fail and I did mess up when I was learning how to make the perfect macaroon. There were a lot of macaroons that I would not have sold to people. It wasn't until I knew that I had practiced well enough that I could do them consistent, that I knew that I could actually sell them to people and people would want to buy them.
So you said you made all of them yourself up until that point, but now you have employees that help you, right?
Yes.
So how do you go about making sure that all the quality is the same regardless of who's making them?
Right. So that's been tricky. So when we opened the shop, we just hired people basically for the register, and I continued to make the macaroons myself. I did bring on an assistant to help with the ice cream and assembly, but every macaroon was still made and hand piped by me up until about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. So it's
Yep.
very new.
Yes. So I am in the process right now of training another baker, and she was an assistant with the ice cream before that. Kind of got a little promotion, I guess. But I've been coming in and training her hands-on, showed her how I did it exactly, and showed her, hold the bowl this way, hold the mixer this way, make sure it looks like this. This is how many.
She's doing it right now.
Yeah. This is how many drops of food color you need. If it's this color, we need this many drops. If it's this color.
Wow. That looks
great.
beautiful.
She just showed me an example of asking if it was the right consistency, and it looks great. So, but along those lines as well, I had to let her learn on her own. So last week she came in and did some baking on her own. And then I came back and looked at them, and they weren't, and they weren't quite right. So we came back and we reanalyzed, and I said, okay, this is, again, watch how I do it. Let's see how you were doing it. What can we fix? What can we change? Because it is a learning curve. And she hasn't made thousands of macaroons like I have.
Exactly.
And even with just a few adjustments, that because of my time and effort that I've put into it, I know exactly what changes needed to happen to make her macs go from passable to almost identical to mine.
I'm curious now, with all of this going on, let's go back and just consider these past 7 months since you've been in the shop. What has been the hardest thing for you to figure out in terms of doing retail?
What's nice is I had the 2 years of doing everything else before jumping into a store. So I knew the time frame I needed to make X amount of max. I knew the time frame I needed. I knew the equipment I needed. I knew the supplies I needed.
Yeah.
So coming here, basically all I needed, obviously I changed to a commercial kitchen from my home kitchen, but the biggest adjustment was hiring employees, giving out a piece of it away from me. So not being the one to hand each and every mac across my freezer at my pop-up shops and seeing face to face each and every customer, to just kind of having this hovering look. I come in and open the shop and close the shop every night. But during those 4 or 5 hours that we're open, it's kind of out of my control.
Yeah, it definitely is. Especially when you have a small business where you're the one making the whole product, it becomes a representation of yourself.
Right,
and
exactly.
So giving that away is a hard thing to do at first.
Yes.
So the way that you started this business is very, very unique. I haven't heard a ton of people doing that, doing the marketing strategy and the way that you went about doing it. So I want to jump into there and talk about that a little bit, because I think our listeners can learn a lot and maybe get a few new ideas with that, because it's not anything that I had considered before, like pop-up shops, partnering with retail, other stores and stuff. So can you just walk us through a little bit what you did to promote and kind of your weekly schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. So it started, like I said, we didn't have a space, and at the beginning, I knew I didn't want a retail space. I wasn't ready for that. I didn't want any overhead. It was nice to just be in my home. I knew the cost of the product. I mean, and how many businesses can say the very first day they opened, they were profitable, right? I mean, my first day, I covered the cost of all of my supplies and the freezer to haul them. I mean, that was basically my overhead to start the company.
Yeah.
So I knew there was no loss. There was no risk. And how many people can say that? That's pretty fantastic. It wasn't even until later that we bought a bigger oven and things like that. So that was nice, going into it with no fear of losing anything. I had nothing to lose at that point. But I also knew that I wanted to be in locations that people could find. I wanted to be easy. So our grand opening was held at Amara Day Spa in Orem, right off of a main street with the freeway entrance. And I knew people could find it easily. And we put balloons out and everything, but I just wanted to be accessible. I wanted people to know where we were. We had a big teal umbrella everywhere we were at, so people could spot us from far away. So that was really good. So I reached out to Amara Day Spa and I said, hey, this is what we're doing. I know your location. I think it's great. I could also bring people into your boutique side of the salon. Can we come take over a corner of your boutique for a couple hours. And they were so gracious and so nice, and they let us come. The next week I reached out to another local shop, Osmond Design on State Street in Orem as well. That day, because of the hype of our grand opening, we sold out in 25 minutes our second week. After that, places reached out to us to host us at their pop-up shops. One of our biggest places, people who have been with us for a while will know, we were always at Charming Charlie's in South Jordan.
I remember that. My mom lives in South Jordan, and so I remember that.
Perfect. Yeah. So Charming Charlie's reached out to us and said, we would love to have you do one of your pop-up shops at our store. And from that, we were able to go to some of their other locations. Just the process of making macs. You got to bake
just
those
smacking it
down. Yep. So because of that, we were able to go to their different locations, which was super nice, but also nice to know that people weren't having to track us down at all these different places. It was mostly we were going to be at this Charming Charlie's on this day.
Yeah.
Throughout the summer, we got to a point where almost every weekend we would be doing a pop-up shop. And I knew about how many we needed to make a week. And my husband and I would load our freezer into the back of our car and drive it up there and set up for a couple hours and sell out sometimes before the 2 hours was up and come home. So that was it. I'd bake during the week. On Saturdays, it took a couple hours and then we were done.
How many would you make during the week?
At that time with the pop-up shops, we'd do about 12 dozen. So we would do like 150 max.
Okay. What's the time that goes into making macs?
So now the time is a little less. I've gotten faster. I've gotten whatever, our oven is a lot faster.
Yeah.
But at that time, it took a while. And I only had a single oven at home. So I could do one cookie sheet at a time.
Yep.
And when you're doing 12 dozen, which takes 2 cookie sheets, I would be baking for hours. And I had a bakery rack in my kitchen stacked with all these cookie sheets and just would be rotating. That was the biggest thing, was rotating out the batches of macs all day long.
I get that. On Saturday, I wanted to find a way to make a little bit of extra money myself as well. And so I started selling my own cookies there. So I just posted online, got a lot of orders, and I literally spent 10 hours baking on Saturday. Yeah. So I get that. It's a lot of work baking, but I love it too. It's a lot of fun.
It's so fun and so rewarding.
Yeah. So one thing that you mentioned there, I really liked, and I want to touch on, you talked about when you reached out to Amara Day Spa, you brought up the fact that you could bring people into their store. And I think that's really, really big when it comes to partnering with other people or reaching out to them. You have to have something to offer them. Generally, people want to help out however they can, but at the same time, you have to give them a reason to say yes.
Right.
If you're only looking out for yourself, nobody wants to be around that person in a friendship or in any kind of relationship. Sure. So why should a business relationship be any different there?
Yeah.
And so the way that you address that, like if you're going to do the same thing, if you have a business that does something similar, whenever you reach out to people, you should always be looking at how you can add value to them.
Right.
Because then it becomes a mutually beneficial relationship and everyone wins there.
Definitely. That's one part of why we loved this space so much as well, as I've been wanting to bring in, and we have held pop-up shops in our own shop now. And that's been super rewarding to be able to have these small businesses come into my space and do what I did when I started my business. Obviously, because of all the craziness now, it's been a few months since we've been able to have people in. But that's something I'm really looking forward to again, is being able to support those small shops by bringing them in here as well.
So we've talked a lot about your business, how you guys have grown and all that. But obviously, this show, I like talking about just mistakes and failures and things, because in reality, that's where we get to where we are. And that's how we can truly grow. Like, we might have a good product, but until it bombs one time, we're never going to learn what we need to change to make it great. So for you with Max a la Mode, what would you say has been your biggest mistake or failure that you guys have experienced?
Luckily, there haven't been very many public failures because we started small, because we started in my home. The failures have been on a smaller scale before we brought it kind of to our shop and to the mainstream. But there have been, recipe failures. Of course, we've talked about that. Macarons can fail in 100 different ways. Permitting fails. I literally, to start the business, Googled how to start a business in Utah, how to start a cottage food business, how to do these things. And there's always something you can miss. The reason we had to move to a shop is because one of the permits for the cottage food ended up not being what it needed to be. And there were rules that I didn't know about, and we couldn't do it out of my home anymore.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So for the first 2 years, were you basically doing it illegally, or was that something that changed?
I'm not sure. Not knowingly doing it illegally.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think once we took a closer look at some of the guidelines, it was like, oh, we probably shouldn't have been doing this out of my home for this long.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So with all of that, coming to the point where you realize that you were basically doing it illegally, it could have been really easy just to be like, well, we made a good amount of money up to this point.
Right.
Let's cut our losses. This is moving into retail is something we've never done before.
Right.
So we might as well just end it.
It was already getting really hard at that point. I had just had a baby, a second baby, and it was a lot harder even to find the time in my house to do the baking.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was already even thinking and wondering if it was worth it at this point with the schedule, with my 2 kids, everything. Luckily, we had a basement apartment that was the commercial kitchen I was baking out of. So I was at least able to separate myself enough, but it was still just a struggle and scheduling and everything. And it was stressful on me with a new baby and everything, that I was wondering if it was worth it to continue. And then these permitting things happened, and it was like, okay, then is this kind of my sign? Do I just stop? And I think that would have been the easy route for sure. Luckily, that didn't happen. I was ready to quit at that point, and I knew that I would be okay if it ended. I had a good run. Yeah. It was cool and fun, but now I had a family I needed to take care of. But that's not what happened. Thank goodness. We wanted to keep going at least a little bit. This was, I'm not even sure, but we said, okay, let's rent a commercial space. I contacted a catering company in Linden and inquired about renting out their commercial space and having my licensing through there and everything. And then we would just continue with our pop-up shop model. And that was going to be fine. And I knew that would carry us through the summer, and it would still be something we could do. And then I happened to look at retail space available, and a mile away from my home, this space opened up, and we came and looked at it, signed a lease, and 3 weeks later, we had our grand opening of the shop.
Wow. 3 weeks.
3 weeks. We turned this place over. We tore down walls. We painted. We did flooring, ordered furniture, built walls, everything within 3 weeks, and we were ready to open.
Oh my goodness. So you went from being on the verge of just closing it to then within the time frame of a couple months max, you now have this retail thing.
Right.
Like, what was going through your mind with all that? Like, why? I guess I'm just curious. You said you were ready to quit. So what changed to make you push forward?
The potential. The potential we always knew was in the shop, but we never had the space to grow. We never had the resources to grow. It was either open a shop or have 3 or 4 pop-up shops a week in different locations. And it just made sense to just be central. And the fact that this space already had a commercial kitchen was huge. We didn't have to do a big build out. It all just kind of, with a lot of hard work, fell into place. But the potential that we knew that Max always had, that helped push us. And there were a lot of late nights, and it was also terrifying. Yeah. Terrifying to all of a sudden take on this big overhead, all of a sudden I went from myself to 7 employees in 2 weeks.
Oh, geez.
And so it was very overwhelming. It was very scary. It was a huge leap of faith, and it's been so worth it.
That is a whirlwind.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to wrap my brain around that. Going from being about to close to then 2 months later having a shop open. That's crazy. So let's jump back in again with, obviously you've had a lot of struggles. Entrepreneurship is a roller coaster. You have ups, you have downs, highs and lows all the time. And I feel like you're never going to have the same day because there's new challenges constantly there. So how is it that you push forward in the face of failure and you embrace that uncertainty?
Seeing the success, seeing the joy on people's faces really means a lot. For a long time, it's been hard to kind of reconcile myself with the business. I see myself and the business as one. Well, no, actually as 2. So I would say, oh, look what these people are saying about Max a la Mode. And my husband said, no, they're saying that about you. They're saying you are Max a la Mode. Yeah. And I said, no, I'm Jenna. This is they love Max. And it's you are, trying to take on, I guess, the personification of the company has been tricky. And I think that's why I could have stopped at the point that I did, is I never took it upon myself as an identity. You didn't have an identity. Yeah. Right. It was never, like I said, I didn't start it to become $1 million company, and we're still not $1 million company.
Yeah.
But I didn't start it with that goal. I started it as a side hustle. So I knew if it did fail, I was almost protecting myself. Right. Okay. So that if it was like, oh, okay, yeah, that was something I did, it's not who I am. Now I go to Costco and I hear people, "You're Max All About." Yeah. Yep, that's me. So that's been crazy, and it's only more intensified since the shop has opened, of course.
So with that, did it ever feel like you had kind of one foot out the door and one foot in, since you were kind of distancing yourself?
I would say so, yeah.
Okay.
And of course it was all I did, but yeah, and it still is crazy to look around. I mean, literally sitting in my own shop right now with pictures of my Max that I took up on the wall, and coloring pages with my logo that I created in Word, like all these things. And it's insane to me still. I come in early in the morning and I unlock these doors and I walk into this kitchen, and it's still so surreal to me that this is something that I've grown with, obviously lots of help and lots of support. And my husband is a saint and helped me lay all this floor and everything, and has been there with me obviously from day one, and has helped assemble sandwiches and came to every single pop-up shop and all these things that have led to this amazing space and everything. It's just crazy and overwhelming and surreal still.
I'm kind of curious, when did you reconcile those two, or when did you finally embrace the fact that you were going to be seen as Max a la mode and kind of dive into that persona?
Basically, when I opened the shop and knew I needed to up my marketing, I needed to up my game basically on social media. I listened to Allison from Allison.
Yeah, the Allison Show?
The Allison Show, yes.
Okay.
And she said, you need to be social on social media to grow your brand. And I said, that clicked for me. Something in there, I need to show my face. I need to, every single day, I am showing my face on Instagram saying, hey guys, happy whatever day it is, because who knows what day it is during this time right now. And I go through our flavors and I tell them our hours, and I am the face of Max a la Mode. And that has made a huge difference, is being social on social media. I mean, you can only go so far posting your product and posting about things. But when people see that I'm the one who makes them and they come in and they recognize me and they know I'm behind Max a la Mode, it's made a big difference.
For sure. People connect with other people. They don't connect with product. Like a product might be good, but what I've found is, and I'm not saying you want to do this, but people are willing to overlook subpar products if there's good relationships there. Just imagine if you have a great product with that relationship. It just, that relationship becomes so much stronger there exponentially. So that's something that I struggle with a ton too, is I hate showing my face on social media with my business, but I've also tried to get a lot better at doing that with it too.
It makes a difference. And then, and then with that comes, like I said, the recognition that I've gotten at Costco and things. And my husband jokes now. He says, well, you're a public figure. I'm not. But it's funny. You do get recognized more the more you put yourself out there. And that's a great thing.
Yeah. And that was one thing that for me personally, going through all that, I would always had a hard time, because I didn't want to see, the reason why I was surprised when you said that you and your brand were separate was because for me, it's opposite. Like, I identified myself so much as my company. I guess I didn't want to connect myself to my company a ton in case my company failed, because then I would view it as a representation of myself. And so it was hard for a long time to be able to distance myself from that and recognize that, oh, okay, I'm an individual. My company's my company, but at the same time, it's still a big part of me. And so I can still put myself out there and do all that. So it's interesting to me talking to other entrepreneurs, just seeing the different viewpoints there, because I think doing this, I go into an interview and I have my way of thinking. And so I subconsciously just project that onto the person I'm talking to. That's why I love doing these podcasts and interviews so much, because it opens my mind to brand new ways of thinking that I didn't even know existed out there.
For sure.
So thanks for sharing all that. I think it's really cool. You mentioned trying to, well, a few minutes ago, you talked about how you were on social media and you would jump on every day talking about the hours during this crazy time of coronavirus and everything. What has been the biggest challenge for you during all of this? Obviously, I'm sure foot traffic has gone down exponentially, but I guess besides that, what has been the biggest challenge? And as a secondary question to that, have you come up with like any new unique ways to promote your product that you wouldn't have thought of before?
The hardest thing at first was just the not knowing if we were going to get shut down, if we were going to be locked down, if people were still going to come. So the week before things kind of got crazy and school shut down and everything, I ran a promotion. Every Monday we do a family 4-pack deal where if you buy 4 Macs, you save $4. And so we ran that promotion from over a weekend. And people came in, and I mean, the deal brought them in, but also the panic of not being able to have Macs if we were going to be locked in our houses for a month.
Yeah.
Brought a lot of people in the doors. And I was so grateful for that because of the support and everything, but also with the promotion and the sales and everything, we were able to make enough money that if I did have to shut down for 3 weeks, we would have been okay. So the next week we chose to close our doors, just waiting to kind of hear what was going to happen. When it was clear that we were okay to still open our doors as long as people didn't stay and people could take out our product, then we opened our doors back up and people were so happy. So luckily people have still been coming in. We've run the promotion still a couple times, but luckily people want to have a little buildup of, I mean, it's not as essential as toilet paper and water, but people are stocking up on Macs, and that's super flattering and it's been super helpful, and people are so supportive. We did one of the weekends, or the first weekend we opened our doors again, we did kind of a pop-up shop out on our very own corner right outside our shop so people could stay in their cars and just drive up and get some Macs. That was helpful, but also there were people going into the restaurant in our little strip mall that came over and said, "What are you doing? Are you a small business? What is it?" And I had a guy buy $40 worth of Macs because he wanted to support a small business. And that meant the world.
Yeah.
It was really, really cool. And to see people banding together to support small businesses like me has been really, really cool to see.
Yeah. It's been obviously a whirlwind the past month going through everything there, but I've felt a lot more support too. Even though my business is definitely not doing what we were doing before, I can still feel the support from everyone. And I get messages all the time, reaching out, just checking in, seeing how I'm doing, asking how they can support. I've had people buy gift certificates, which I've never offered before, ever. And yet people are still willing to do that and offer it, like suggesting they do that to help out. And so it's been really cool just to see how the community gets together.
Right.
I think in the first couple weeks, you saw the other side of it where people were fighting over toilet paper and doing all that craziness.
Yep.
But once that uncertainty, I guess it hasn't gone away because we still have no idea when things are going to get back to normal, but people are used to the uncertainty more, and you see more of that support all around.
The shelves aren't as bare. There's not as much of a scarcity.
Exactly. Which toilet paper of all things, I don't understand that. I think that's so weird, but that's a really good point that you bring up, because it was interesting for me. I said, like I mentioned before, last weekend, I sold cookies by myself just to make a little bit of extra money. And it blew me away. I had like 30 orders, and a lot of it was from people I didn't even know. And it was just like, and I'm not saying you do this to ask for pity or support or anything like that, but like I was open and I said, "Hey, look, my business has been hit hard, but I'm trying to find ways to support myself. I'm not looking for a handout. So try some of these cookies. I think they're great." And it was crazy to see all the support that I got. And then just all the feedback afterwards saying how they loved it and they were willing to like do it in the future if I did it. It was really cool. Very, very fun to be a part of there. Sure. So to wrap up, I have a list of a couple questions, just like my lightning round really quick. So the first one is for you. What would you say is your biggest fear?
Just losing everything and everyone I know. I love.
So it's a very big fear.
Yeah, a pretty big, broad fear. But like if I woke up tomorrow and I was alone with nobody I knew and loved, worst fear ever. Okay.
Understandable. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the epitome of waking up stranded on a deserted island there. Yep. So you would hate that.
Terrifying.
Okay. The second one is what is your personal definition of failure?
Quitting. Just not even trying after you fail. Giving up. That's failure.
So tagging along with that, how do you use those failures as a learning experience to not do that? Because sometimes failures are really, really big.
Right.
You can fail and land flat on your face.
Right.
And yet you still have to move forward. So how do you do that?
Trying to think of a different way to approach something. I mean, the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. If you fail at one thing, you can't keep trying to do it exactly the same way, or you might keep failing. I think if you make adjustments and even if they're tiny little adjustments, like we said, those macaroons that my assistant made last week, they weren't great. They weren't a huge, massive failure, but they weren't great. But with a few minor adjustments, she's been able to make them so much better.
And I think that goes to another point too. Like, just because you have a good product doesn't mean you should stop there.
Right.
There's always ways to improve. You could have something that sells. I'm just obsessed with cookies now. I've had cookies on my mind the last few weeks, but I've been trying to come up with I've been creating a new recipe for a Biscoff cookie. And I think the flavor is really good. And my roommates all tell me that the flavor is like incredible.
Yeah.
But yet at the same time, it doesn't look quite like what I want it. So I need to still be tweaking all of that there. So that goes along with that too. If you have something that's good, don't be satisfied with good.
Right.
Don't ever be satisfied, actually. Even if it's great, always be looking for those tiny tweaks to be able to improve it.
To go along with that, one of our most popular flavors right now is pistachio. And pistachio ice cream is one of my favorites. But it took us 2.5 years, almost 3 years, to even introduce pistachio at the shop because I never found a pistachio ice cream that was good enough to go in my max. So yeah, I mean, I kept trying them. I would literally buy a carton of ice cream and test it and like, nope, this isn't happening. That happens with a lot of flavors that I try and they're not what I want it to be.
It's all about testing it over and over and over again. So the next question is, what is one personal habit that you have in your life that contributes to your success?
I would say more of personal attribute is perfectionism. Like, I am very much a perfectionist to the point where if it doesn't look good or if it's not perfect, I don't want that to be a representation of my brand or myself or whatever. That pushes me to make the best thing I can.
Okay. And then the next one is kind of twofold. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received? And then adding on to that, what is a piece of advice that you would give somebody who is starting a business?
That's tricky. I actually always say, don't listen to all the advice you're given. A lot of people, especially when you're starting a business or if you're starting something new, so many people have an opinion or advice they want to give you.
Yeah.
And most of it's not relevant. Most of it's not helpful. Most of it's counterintuitive. A lot of it doesn't even apply to what you're doing. And and I always take advice graciously and I say, oh, thank you so much. I'll think about that or I'll do this. And then I do what I know is going to be better, or I do my own research on the topic.
Yeah.
And come to the best thing I think is going to be. So I guess my advice is non-advice to not really listen to everybody's advice.
Okay.
Seek out the advice you want from people you know and respect, but know that you're going to get a lot of advice that you don't want.
Yeah.
And that's not helpful.
And going along with that, I think that ties in really, really well with just finding a mentor. Like, take the advice of someone who's done what you've wanted to do. I get advice all the time from, well, not so much anymore, but like my dad at the beginning when I was starting a business, he would always give me this advice. And he is the opposite of a risk taker. He does well for himself, but like he's very set in his 9 to 5 with all of that. But yet he was trying to give me advice on how to run a business and do all that. But he wasn't doing what I was trying to do.
Right.
So why listen to somebody? And I love my dad and he gives great advice for life stuff, for other things. But with business, find someone who's done what you want to do and then listen to them. Because you mentioned this too. Once you start a business, all your friends and family are going to have an opinion on how you should do this or that. But take all of that with a big grain of salt because none of them have tried it. There's a reason they're just ideas because they haven't tried it to see if it works or not. Then the last question in this is, what is your favorite book and why?
I actually just finished a book called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. I'm not big into self-help and motivational and whatever because I don't like people saying you're doing this wrong, change yourself. Not that I think I'm perfect or great.
Yeah.
But This book had a few interesting points, and it kind of goes along with, you had this idea you should have jumped on. This idea is kind of the same, where ideas come to us, and if we don't act on those ideas, they'll find another person that will develop those ideas. So that was super cool. I mean, just if you want to do something, do it. I mean, I had this idea. I wanted to start a business. I didn't know how to start a business. Like I said, I literally Googled how to start a business, what I needed to do to get a business license, what I needed to do to all these things. And you just have to go for it. Just take that leap of faith and go for it. If you want to start a business, just do it. If you have to start it in your house, do it. If you want to, I mean, you can't start too small.
I love it. I love books and I love reading all kinds of genres there. And so I think it's just crucial for being able to open your mind to new ways of thinking as well. So then to wrap up here, I'm just curious to hear from you. What does the future hold for you and for Max a la Mode? What are some of the goals that you guys have in the near future or long term?
Yeah, I think now that we have this kind of flagship store, if you want to call it that, we can go a lot of different ways. We've talked about still doing some pop-up shops this summer to get our reach. We also, obviously, if you've been following us very much, we do weekend features at there's a soda shop in Salt Lake called Thirst. We go up there and they do weekend features every week. We do Dottie's Kolaches and Heber as well. We take our product there and they sell them over the weekend for us. So things like that too, being featuring our product in other people's shops, but also we would love to expand our own shop, maybe have a drive-through location sometime. That would be super nice. People ask all the time if we're going to expand into other treats, have cookies or other things. I mean, at this point, I have no desire to make more products. I think our Macs are great, but also it's nice to just have one product that would do really well. Yeah. We do offer canned sodas in our shop as well, but we're not a soda and treats place. There's people who do that and they do it really well. That's not what we do. Also, it'll just be really nice to be able to do events like we wanted to have in our shop originally, once we can have groups again. So it's been really nice to have the space for people to come and hang out. We have a bookshelf full of games that people come and play, and it's so much fun. We were doing once a month bunko nights, and that was super fun. Like I said, we've hosted a few pop-up shops. I want to do paint nights. I want to have this space be kind of a community space for people to come and use and just come and hang out and fill this space.
That's what a lot of small businesses that I've talked to that have had success, that's how they started. Like Albion Fit started 100% with that. Now they're this really big company but they started with doing community nights in their shop, and that really brought it all together. So I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
And then the last but not least is, obviously, I highly recommend Max a la Mode. I think everyone should try them and get them constantly. But where can our listeners find you guys on social media, on, I guess, where's your location at, all of that?
Yeah. So our biggest platform we're on is Instagram. That's where we've grown our biggest following and how we've really grown our business. We're also on Facebook. We're on Yelp and Google and all those things. And like I said, our shop, now we are right on State Street in Orem. We're at 934 North State Street, Suite 109 in Orem, Utah. We are located by the Macy's grocery store. We're right next door to Play It Again Sports and Season Salon. And there's an amazing Thai food, Bangkok Grill, right in this little strip mall. We're right on the corner. We've got big banners actually coming next week. So it will be a little bit easier to find. But yeah, we're right here, right off the State Street in Orem.
Cool. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today here. I'm super excited to see what the future holds for you guys, and come support them during this time. Small businesses definitely appreciate all the support that you can give. Plus the treats just make it awesome for all the home activities that you have to do now. So thank you again. And
thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, have a great rest of your week.
Thanks. You too.
Okay, really quick before checking out here, I just wanted to come on again and say thank you so much, Fail Nation, for making this show what it has become. It's honestly been one of my favorite things that I've done in my life, mainly because I get to connect with you guys. The last thing is, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to this podcast and leave a rating and a review. That is what really helps spread the word. And I've got big plans for the year 2020 on this podcast. So I really want to get as many people listening as possible. I look forward to sharing our new podcast episode with you next week. And until then, keep failing your way towards achieving your dreams.